Well, hello, Tansei. My name is Christine Davies, and generally when I'm presenting, I like to give a little bit of my own background and why I kind of started in this field. So we are presenting on NiGiNan Housing Ventures. And so for myself, I'm a Métis woman. My mother was a residential school survivor, so I grew up with a lot of intergenerational trauma. Didn't really understand that piece as I was growing up, of course. I didn't put two and two together until later on. But at the age of 15, I ended up leaving my home. I went to the youth emergency shelter. And at that time, I was introduced to crystal meth. And initially, all of my pain, all of the struggles, a lot of the addictions that I grew up around, a lot of the abuse that I endured throughout my childhood went away at that time, right? So it became a crutch, it became a coping mechanism. And I kind of continued. I experienced homelessness for about 10 years, in and out of prison systems, and in and out of addictions and survival crime. And I ended up in prison for my rock bottom, I kind of like to call it. And during that time, and this is something I always love to talk about, is I was called back to the drum. So I was called back to my cultural identity, and I think that that's something really important, and that's something that really shines in the work that we do within NiGiNan Housing. So I remember going, and we were able to sit around the drum, and we were able to just have conversations. And I was introduced to so many different women from like Manitoba, and introduced to song and my cultural identity, because I didn't understand that piece. And I started understanding that intergenerational trauma. I started just understanding a lot more. So when I was released from prison, I continued on my journey in my cultural identity, and I found the work that now I'm really blessed to be able to do, and that's working with the inner city and working with the Indigenous communities. So I started working with E4C, a nonprofit organization in harm reduction housing and transitional. Absolutely loved it. I started as a frontline worker. I started really building a passion for leadership and advocating and sharing my own lived experience. I also saw a benefit of having folks like myself with lived experience making decisions, and also, creating programming and participating in that programming, right? So being a community member myself, I think that there is a huge impact on having folks like both of us doing the work that we're doing. So long story short, I've been in housing for almost 7 years now. I've been working in this field for almost 7 years. I am currently working at NiGiNan Housing, and I went from being the PSH supervisor, which I'll get to talk about one of our programs, and now I am the Persons with Developmental Disabilities manager. So it's really exciting. It's a new role that I get to learn and navigate, so that's been really exciting. So it's a little bit about myself. I'm really excited to share what we get to do at NiGiNan. Out of all the organizations, I absolutely love every single one. I've worked at Boyle Street, E4C, and I think the experiences have been really blessed. But I feel like I've truly found my home within NiGiNan. I feel like I belong. And it's that cultural piece and that Indigenous piece that's really special to me, the work that we get to do. So, hi, I'll let Jenny introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Stoll. I am a healthcare supervisor with NiGiNan Housing Ventures. My home site is Pamotsuin. I'm just going to share a little bit about my own personal story as well. I struggled with addiction for 17 years, also with crystal meth. I've been in recovery for 8 years, but throughout my stint, I guess I would say, I struggled a lot with childhood trauma, neglect. The list can go on, right? And I struggled with houselessness. I did a couple bits in jail as well. It was my last rock bottom. I actually didn't get clean or sober until I was 6 months pregnant with my second child. The addiction had taken such a toll on my life that I wasn't able to stop. And it's the disease of addiction, right? So yeah, I was 6 months pregnant, and I went to jail, and then I went to treatment, and that's where my recovery started in December 2015. And then I got my very first job. Actually, I was 28, a little bit of a late bloomer, but I was 28 and I got a job at Tim Hortons and I became a supervisor there for a few years. And then my sponsor actually was working with NiGiNan and I was a healthcare aide. And I was just I wanted to get back into healthcare so much, but I had a criminal record. So fortunate enough with NiGiNan, they're very forgiving and they don't judge you by your past and they want to help you and help you grow. And, they see the potential in you. So even though I had a criminal record, I was able to, as long as I was honest and whatnot, I was offered a position there as a healthcare aide. And I was a healthcare aide, and then I became the lead healthcare aide after a few years. And now today I've been with NiGiNan for 5 years, 5 years January. And now I'm a healthcare supervisor. So it's just such an honor to grow with this organization because they opened 10 years ago and they've grown so much in the 10 years that they have been around, and it's just such an honor to be able to grow with them and grow with myself and get connected with the culture, and it's just such an honor.
Yeah, right. All right. So yes, as we kind of explained a little bit, NiGiNan Housing is an Indigenous-led supportive housing agency. And so my favorite part that I like to talk about is NiGiNan does something really different is we house, and I like to put this in quotes, is like the hardest to house. It's interesting when you're actually in the work and you get to work with the folks that are deemed hard to house or like complex individuals, because I always tell this one story, and we have this one fellow, and he has been kicked out of every agency. He gets kicked out, he can get aggressive, he's been kicked out for violence and everything like that, right? So it's like, NiGiNan will take him. Send him to us, we'll take him. So he started in our shelter space, and he actually moved into our supportive housing, I think about 6 months ago. Around December, he moved in. And I'll tell you, like, every single day that I see him, and, with that just consistency, that Indigenous approach, that love, that kindness, the natural law, every time I see him, he opens his arms and is like ready for a hug, like he's ready for a hug. He wants his hug. And there's days where he doesn't, and that's okay, but he's not going around, giving everybody the middle finger. He's not telling everybody to F off. He understands that his boundaries are respected and he's in a safe space. So I always kind of tell that story because I think it's really amazing that we get to serve like the complex individuals and the hardest to house, because it's very necessary. We have very complex mental health. We have very complex substance use. And again, I really love that piece of like that connection and that culture. We see such a huge difference with our folks. So our legacy. So NiGiNan was actually founded, I think it's 10 years actually this year. So by 7 Indigenous women. So we had Ambrose Daniel, who lived most of his life outside in the community. And one December, unfortunately, at the age of 50, he succumbed to the complications of pneumonia. And he ended up passing away, but he was actually one of the ones that was supposed to be first on the list for when Ambrose was built. So we kind of we obviously named Ambrose, our first supportive housing building, after Ambrose Daniels. And I think that's... it's so nice because we get to serve so many other folks and really honor him. We actually have one of his jackets that are framed up in the common space there.
One of his hats.
And one of his hats. So that's kind of a little bit of a background on like how NiGiNan was founded. So again, we are governed by that natural law. So a lot of that kindness, honesty, sharing, and strength is really embedded in all the work that we do. We have the Indigenous culture, we have a person-centered approach, and really based off of relationships, and then again, that lived experience piece. So NiGiNan really honors those experiences, and whatever that looks like. We don't define like lived experience, but we really define, okay, how can our staff and the folks that how can our staff relate to the folks that we're serving? And that's where we kind of bring in that lived experience piece. And there's so many different levels. There's so many different levels of that. So this is our organizational chart. So we have our residents, and then of course we have those wraparound supports. So we have our elders, our knowledge keepers, and our Scopios. And then we have our frontline workers, or independent living support workers. We have our PDD support workers, because PDD is embedded in with all of our programs. And then we have our frontline support workers. We have our amazing healthcare team. And then we have, of course, our kitchen that provides all of the tasty food. And then from there, we have our supervisors, and then we have our site managers, and then we have our directors. So really that wraparound supports. And then we, of course, have our amazing CEO and then our board of directors. Oh, we're going to skip that one. All right, so yeah, Ambrose Place, we'll dive in a little bit in regards to what that supportive housing is. For those that don't know, supportive housing basically means like wraparound services and 24/7 staffed. So Ambrose has 42 units, and we have each floor. I think Jenny actually could potentially speak a little bit more because Jenny has worked there for 5 years.
Yeah, so Ambrose, there's 3 floors, 42 units. We have 3 2-bedroom suites, and then it varies between bachelor and 1-bedroom apartments. So sometimes we will have couples that will come from off the street, and they want to be obviously staying together. So it's nice that we are able to accommodate that in a safe environment, obviously. And then so they'll have a 2-bedroom apartment together and they can stay together.
Yes, and then we obviously have AHS staff that are embedded in there, and then we also have our managed alcohol and cannabis program. So when we get folks that potentially are drinking like hand sanitizer out in the community or anything like that, we really have that harm reduction approach of, okay, maybe instead of hand sanitizer, let's get some vodka and let's do maybe some shots of vodka. Okay, maybe vodka is becoming potentially very harmful, right? We do have some residents that prefer vodka, but now they're going under kidney failure. So now we've had the discussion of like, okay, maybe we want to switch to beer. Let's maybe make beer fun. Maybe we can go to a brewery. Maybe we can pick up different types of beer. So it's just like that harm reduction approach, and we really try to maintain it so that our folks don't maybe go through potential withdrawal. So like a shot an hour, a beer an hour, and then same with our cannabis program. It's very similar. So just helping kind of support and kind of maintain, and then of course eventually working towards minimizing that use. Mm-hmm. Maxwin. So this is my baby. So this is where I started within NiGiNan. So I started as the PSH supervisor, and so we actually just got to open up one of our supportive housing sites. But initially, the Pamatswin also translates to life in Cree. And so we started in 2022, and we started as bridge housing. So we served 84 residents within the bridge housing within the old Sands building. So this is before any construction. We went in there and we were just bringing folks in, and bridge housing essentially means that we're bringing folks in directly out of houselessness. So we're hitting those initial services. So getting ID, seeing a doctor for the first time, seeing the dentist for the first time, getting on income, and just really building relationships and stabilizing. So from there, the city of Edmonton was very interested, and a couple other funders and the government was interested in us continuing to open up more supportive housing options. As we know, there's an initiative with the city of Edmonton to have more supportive sites. So we started construction, and then we actually just finished our construction for the supportive housing site, which has 54 supportive unit suites. They're all bachelor suites. Unfortunately, they're not wheelchair accessible. And we eventually will have our 6 accessible suites that are AHS funded, and those are for our very complex individuals that are in wheelchairs and have those substance use. And then we'll also have, and this should be open by a month from now, 16 I think it is, but it says 15. 15 intake beds, and those are going to be for young adults, so operating very similar to the shelter space. We also have the shelter space, so we saw the benefit of having that bridge site. So now we actually call it the shelter space. It's called ILS, which stands for Indigenous-Led Emergency Shelter Space. And we are able to serve 40 folks now. We just added 6 cubicles, and those are the cubicle style shelter spaces. So everybody gets a curtain, and what we see is a really big sense of community within that shelter space. The nice thing about the shelter space is there's no timelines. So we try to really focus on building relationships, stabilizing, and then transferring people or transitioning into appropriate housing where there's not a big rush. It's not 3 to 6 months. We do have one fellow that's been there for a year, and we're really trying, but sometimes a lot of our folks can fall through some gaps, and there's long wait lists, as we know. But that's the nice thing, is we don't have to kick anybody out or, close a bed just because we have a time constraint. and I don't know if anybody had heard, but it was in the news that we also had our temporary Indigenous-led emergency shelter space, and that was the trailers that were set up in the parking lot. Yeah. So those were the CEVO camp trailers, and then we also had those mini pallet homes. So we were able to do that as an initiative for the winter warming, which was really exciting. We were able to house, I think, over 80 folks during the winter, so that was really exciting. So most of them have found long-term housing. Some of them are back in the shelter space, but are on the wait list for more long-term housing. Oh, okay. Also love this. I love all the buildings. So Omamu Wangu Gamek, which roughly translates to all my relations in Cree and Soto, is a family living unit that's located in Belvedere. So it's 42 units, and essentially the intention behind this space is to remove CFS intervention within Indigenous families. So the idea is to really have cookums, bushums, aunties, uncles within the building that can be a support and a community for our younger children and for the families. So there is on the top floor, it's kind of like a community space where we can have like feasts, we can have dinners, we can have activities. A lot of times we have like ribbon skirt making and a lot of fun activities. So it's really exciting because if mom and dad are having a hard day, rather than having CFS involvement and, having potentially like the children removed or anything that can be really traumatizing, it's essentially intended to just remove that and really bring in that sense of community and family. So it's really exciting. I really think that we need like 20 more. Mm-hmm. It is more independent, so it's a little bit less staff, not staff 24/7, but there's staff available Monday through Friday. And yeah, I don't know, I've spent a lot of time there, and I think it's just really, really nice to see the children. I think we're now looking to open up one of the parks that are in that area. So I think that's happening this year. And yeah, so we're gonna have a park, and that's gonna be intended for the space as well. And then we have MacArthur Place, and this is, I don't know if anybody has seen that initiative with the goal to end homelessness within the city and the partnership with Homer Trust. So this is a partnership with Homer Trust and Alberta Health Services. So very similar to all of our supportive unit housing models. It's 50 suites, and it has 1 bedrooms and bachelor suites available. And then we also have the 10 accessible units, which is really cool. Same thing, 24-hour healthcare services. 24/7 housing services, so they get assigned a housing worker. We have them manage alcohol, we have them manage cannabis, and the housing level need is generally a 3 to a 4, so a little bit more of our complex individuals. And it's actually just really close to here. I don't know if you've seen that white and yellow building that is just behind the movie theater on 137 in St. Albert Trail. Yeah, so that's MacArthur. It kind of just popped up, and I was just like, what is that? Now I know. So, and then this is our persons with developmental disabilities. So PDD, as we know, or maybe you don't, is generally for clients that have an IQ below 70. So generally are folks that have complex needs and that low cognitive functioning. So very similar, we provide the 24-hour staffing. And then so PDD is actually embedded within Pamatswin. We have PDD embedded within Ambrose Place, and then we also have 3 care homes, so located kind of all around the city. So one is located by Kingsway, one is located up by Pamatswin, so on the north side, and then we also have one in Millwoods, and that's our female-only home. So with the PDD program, and I've been really blessed to join and be a part of that, is we essentially provide very similar services, kind of the NiGiNan way. We do serve our more complex PDD folks. So generally we have a lot of people coming to us and saying like, hey, we have this really like complex individual, hard to house, and that's where we're taking on those PDD folks. Because again, I think we can see that there is and there can be a gap for folks with complex needs, low cognitive functioning. I would say that there's just not enough housing for everybody. So we have programming. So we have Wellbriety, which is the Indigenous lens on kind of the NANAA. And then we also have sharing circles. So we have men's and women's sharing circles, and it's kind of offered within the different sites. And then we also have movie night, which is really cool. So there is a room within one of the homes called Patty's, and it's been turned into kind of like a movie theater. So we'll do like popcorn, we'll pick a movie, we'll have snacks. So it's been really amazing. And yeah, I think that's a lot about PDD. Oh yes, here's some of our activities. So these are some of our activities. So the top picture is actually in Ambrose Place in the common area. And then, yeah, most of it looks like it's at Ambrose Place. But again, yeah, we have a lot of programming. We do a lot of activities. We take the folks out to the zoo. But generally, it's not just PDD. We actually just get together as like a whole group and really just, I really see us as all one. We're all community and we're all there supporting each other. So it's been really nice.
So I guess I will touch on healthcare. Excuse me. So like as Christine was saying earlier, we have like a wraparound approach. So our healthcare team consists of LPNs, healthcare aides. We have a health director. She's an RN. We are actually looking at hiring another RN for the 6 beds that we will be opening up in the future, just because they'll have such high phys med needs. So yeah, we'll at most of our sites, so out of our 3 sites, we have 24-hour healthcare staff. There's usually 3 healthcare aides per shift, an LPN, depending. Sometimes we'll have 2, and overnight shift as well. So we'll have morning, evenings, and nights. Our healthcare staff, we help them on different levels. So a lot of it can be emotional support, mental support, physical support. We will help with cleaning their suites, administering medication, assisting them with appointments, any kind of support that they might need just to make their days easier. Yeah, I really love what we do. It's been so great just to grow with the organization. Like I said earlier, the healthcare staff, the healthcare staff's amazing, along with every other team that we work with. So the wraparound approach, we work with the other departments, with the housing department, with appointments. We work very closely with them and with the PDD staff. We're a very tight-knit community, so it's been great.
Yeah. And I think the nice thing to touch on too is I think a lot of times you see like healthcare and housing having really differentiating opinions and really differentiating, like there's guidelines that healthcare has to abide to and then there's housing, right? So I think it's really nice that we've been able to like bridge that and really work together and collaboratively and really figure out like, okay, we need this piece from the healthcare and then we have this piece with the housing and like how can we work together, because healthcare is such a huge part, right? There's that mental health piece, there's that just like going to see a GP for the first time. There's dealing with pharmacies. There's just the relationship, because I think like folks have such a strong relationship most of the time with pharmacies, as we see in the community. That's sometimes their only support, and sometimes their only consistent support is, attending a pharmacy or, getting their methadone or getting their Suboxone. So I think it's really nice that we can also bring that within NiGiNan and really support that way. So it's been really amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
So again, that really big continuum of care, right? So really based on those 4 natural laws, I feel like I kind of chatted a little bit mostly about all of this piece. It's just a really nice graph and a really nice chart. But again, really relying on that like cultural identity and that ceremony and connection. And that, I just feel like it's so nice to have that shelter space, because I think Pimmatsoon is the only one within Alberta that actually has that shelter space and then also has that supportive housing space within the same site. So it's really cool to see, because we see our folks who are coming directly out of houselessness, and then we have our folks who have been stabilized and in supportive housing for 6 to 9 months, and they're coming together and they're supporting each other and like taking them under their wing and building community and playing bingo together and eating together and having conversation. And I think that that's just been really exciting to see. So what I always like to do is just kind of bring it back to when I was experiencing houselessness. Like, there wasn't programming like this. So it's been almost 12 years since I've been off my substance of choice. And from my experience, you had to go through abstinence to have housing. So I think it's just really beautiful that we get to have this type of programming. And I think it's really amazing that we're starting to really build on that Indigenous-led piece. I think it's so important because, as we know, the majority of the houseless population, 76%, potentially more, that was a number, I think, from last year, out of the houseless community is Indigenous population. So this is really strong and powerful for me. And I always like to bring it back to that piece of like, when I was experiencing houselessness, I would have loved to have what NiGiNan does and what the staff does, because every single day, you know, I get to go and I get to hug people and I get to talk to people and I get to have like communication. I get to just sit and be with my people and my community. And I think that is so powerful.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, because it's just, we get to be humble. We're not above them, you know, we're the same as them. We build those relationships with them. And they look forward to seeing you every day. And it's really hard for them to build that trust with people at first, because they just haven't had that in their life. So just being able to be that constant for them, be that support for them, it means the world. And it makes me enjoy and love my job so much. It doesn't even seem like a job. And also just, we meet them where they're at when they come in to Nigignan. We don't pressure them to change. You know, we're there to support them if they decide to do so, which is amazing. And we try really hard to bring their culture back into their life. We offer sweat lodges. We do sweat lodges once a week, which is amazing. We also partake in them. I love to do that because I need to get grounded on most days. So yeah, it's been amazing.
Absolutely. Hi.
Hey.